You've secured funding, whether it's grants, donations, or investments. But now comes the real challenge, making that money work for you. Too many social enterprises burn through funds without building long-term sustainability. So how do you stretch every pound to maximize impact and avoid the common traps that drain resources? Well, today I'll be dropping some insights as to how to do exactly that to ensure that you know the best way to leverage your funding so your mission can thrive. So, over the years of building my business and consulting, I've seen this moment so many times that your application has been successful, email or letter comes through, and you jump for joy and think, yes, I've made it, my problems are over. However, more often than not, that's not the case. I mean, don't get me wrong, securing finance is great. However, I've often found that many social entrepreneurs have tried to make the vision line up to the money instead of the money lining up to the vision. The problem with this method is that you can blink and the money's gone and the needle hasn't even moved, sending you right back to the drawing board looking for the next funding pot. I spoke a little bit about this in episode 3. Do you understand the business side to your social venture? Where I explained how around the time of the funding cuts in 2011, a lot of great charities and social businesses closed down because they hadn't built a sustainable social business model. That's why I started to ensure that whether it was for my client or for my own organization, whatever we were applying for needed to be able to support the long-term need, not just the short-term want. And I did that by adopting these 3 financial mindsets. Think like an investor, not just a spender. Every investment into your project, business, or idea, whether it be grant funding or social investment, should be steering your trajectory towards making your vision sustainable. Therefore, before you even apply, you should consider if it does that by asking yourself these questions. Will this finance help me generate more finance? What you want the money for will determine the answer to this question. For example, is the funding so that you can bring on new staff members or project workers? Having more sets of hands is great because, as they say, many hands make light work. But have you considered how to best utilize increasing your workforce? Are they going to just be able to lend a hand, or can their role help you generate more income? Could they actually be an actual income generation role by marketing your services and raising your brand recognition? Or could taking them on allow you to pass on some of your duties and responsibilities to them and free up your time to raise more funds? Maybe you want the money to get a project off the ground, which is also fine. However, what's the plan beyond that? Instead of looking at it as just getting off the ground, think about how this funding can help you test your idea, service, or hypothesis. What do you want to be able to know for sure when the project's over? And will that information help you make a case for further finance or a paid contract? Like I said, receiving funding is great, but thinking like an investor means considering what you're going to be able to reap from this money in the long run. At the very least, you should be able to see that it's either going to help you attract more finance, improve your efficiency, or drive measurable impact going forward. Prioritize your core needs over the nice-to-haves. Avoid the trap of spending on feel-good expenses that don't actually grow your impact. I remember early on in my organization, it was pretty much just me, and I was renting this lovely office in the city centre. I'd look around and see my nice desk, my computer, and all my lovely office things, but the business was hardly turning over anything, and it made no sense at that point to have such a costly outgoing, but it felt nice to have. And I stayed in denial about that office way past the expiry date. And I laugh about it now because I feel like God literally had to just push me out of there and say, not now. But at this point, I'd gone through some major life changes and had moved back in with my parents and had to pack everything up in their garage and just, store it there. I felt so defeated, like, what is this life? However, everything was actually working out for my good, in that by reducing that outgoing, I no longer had this monthly panic of how am I going to pay the rent, and instead I could focus on the necessary moves to make to move things along. Instead, my dad, bless him, cleared out the utility room in the back garden and let me turn it into my office. And I stayed in that little box for a solid couple of years before it was time to move into a bigger space. But this time when I did, it was a core need and not just a nice to have. And the finance I brought into the company allowed for me to pay for a decent space for myself and my team by that point. Maybe you've got your own version of a plush office versus utility room situation going on right now. Or maybe you're considering some kind of purchase with the finance or funding investment you've secured and you're just not sure what to do. A great clarifying question to ask yourself is, before you sign the cash away, will this purchase help me reach more people, improve operations, or create financial sustainability? Is this a core need or just a nice to have? Diversify and multiply your funding streams. Relying on one source of income is very risky. Like I've said a few times now, many of those organizations I knew of closed down because of this very reason. All the eggs were in one basket, and when the basket got taken away, that was it. What income streams support your sustainability plan? Whenever I forecast for my organization, I always look at our financial ratio, which is basically looking at what we project to generate in the year and how much of what we generate is funding against sales of services, etc. When we first started, the funding percentage was almost 100%. And even though it was covering overheads, staff, and project costs, it wasn't sustainable. Every year I was having to find funding to replace the lost amounts. And if funding went away, that meant a reduction in output, which ultimately meant a reduction in our impact. It was an unsustainable model of delivery. So I revamped it by stating a target year on year that our grant-dependent income needed to reduce and the sales of our services should increase. This was written into our sustainability plan and is part of our annual objectives, which feeds into everything that we do. The great thing about this is that it hopefully means when funding is not available, it doesn't mean our service just stops. Our desire at Open Lens Media is to be a lasting resource in the communities we serve and support, and we can't achieve that if we're totally dependent upon funding. What about you? Are you currently able to direct your services to more than one stream of income? If not, try this. Make a list of what you offer, and next to each service, project, or product, note down what income streams can support the long-term sustainability of that item. You may find it's just one or multiple. Either way, seeing it in black and white will help you start to think about how you can ensure that you're diversifying your income streams within your social business. So, those are my 3 financial mindsets that can help you leverage your funding to achieve long-term sustainability. Think like an investor, not just a spender. Prioritize your core needs over the nice to haves, and diversify and multiply your funding streams. Remember, getting funding is not the goal. Using it well is. Every pound you have is a tool for impact, and the way you manage your resources will determine whether your organization thrives or struggles. Take a look at your last 3 major expenses. Were they investments in sustainability or just costs? If you found this episode helpful, tag me on social media and hashtag The Social Corner and share your biggest takeaway with me. And for more on this episode, head over to my website at dainaandersonandpunzi.com and subscribe to download the episode guide. Don't forget to connect with me on social media, and you can find all my social media handles in the bio. I'll be back in the Social Corner next week for another social conversation, driving social change.